So, welcome to today's webinar. I'm Ashley Murphy. This is my wonderful wife, Eliza Priest. Today is the sixth installment in our Living Between Two Countries, the US and Australia. We've been back in Australia now for 6 months, and we have some updates we'd love to share with you. All right. I first want to just be clear in explaining this is not personal financial advice. If you are a client of mine, then that is something that we do engage in. But today is more of a story about our lives, what we've done, what's worked for us, and what we wish we may have done a little bit differently. Do note, I run a YouTube channel. I've got dozens of videos that I've put up over the last 6 or 7 years, all pertaining to financial planning and investment management challenges that Australians in America and Americans in Australia face, including last month's topic to do with estate tax mitigation and wealth preservation strategies for exiting Australia uh, and US entrepreneurs. A little bit about me. I'm a tri-citizen born in the UK, raised in Australia, spent 20 years living in the US. Did an undergraduate in information management, actually, and business management at UQ. Was a corporate financial analyst before I saw the light and became a financial advisor. That really started the education process was around 2008. Was working in the field by 2010, so it's 15 years this year. I also founded the Global Financial Planning Institute, where we run conferences and teach other advisors on what's required to properly serve a client who has the complexities of managing their financial affairs across borders. Here's an example of the kinds of clients that we work with and the sort of goals that they have expressed to us and the results that we've been able to achieve for them. All right, with that all being said, let's get into it. So Eliza and I both need to stay as still as a statue because with this virtual background, if you move even slightly, then you can be faded out. And unfortunately, my home office is pretty nondescript. It's basically an empty room with an exercise bike, so nothing much to see in here. So today, what are we going to do? We're going to run through the timeline and update of what we've been up to for the last 5 years with a focus on the last 6 months. Talk about the decision to do with shipping versus selling things, the school transition for our kids, financial planning. Would you imagine that I would talk about financial planning? Who would believe it? Healthcare between countries and how to deal with traveling to the US for short periods of time with the most expensive healthcare system in the world. A few comments about business and work and making it function between countries, technology and utilities, and then miscellaneous insights. So with that, why don't we run through the update? Liz, do you want to do this update?
Sure. So sorry, I'm really trying to stay on the screen. So we, after much discussion and soul searching, decided to move back here and make it this our final move. So we came in January. The planning for that was so that the girls would be here at the beginning of the school year. And we moved back to the same area so that we and they were moving back in the same community with friends, same school, etc. We have the rather rigorous travel schedule of going back to the US a couple times a year, and that's equally personal as well as business reasons. That's where all of my side of the family is. That's where the Areté is based and Ashley's other businesses. And so we have a lot of reasons that pull us back towards the United States. So we'll be going twice a year probably.
Including the day after tomorrow. So that will be the first trip back for the family. I was actually back in March for a conference. Here's the timeline of the last couple of years. So back in July 2020, I was on a mountain bike trip and Eliza called me. It was actually a financial advisor mountain bike trip, so with other financial advisors, would you believe? She called and she said, hey, with everything that's going on right now, remember we're in Minneapolis, so there was some major unrest going on there. COVID, just everything. She said, there probably won't be a better time to move to Australia for just a little while, for to get a taste, show our girls what this countries like that you're from, then right now. So why don't we do that? And then over the next 6 months, we worked really hard to get our place ready to rent, our primary residence in Minneapolis, that is. We found a house to rent in Graceville and Brisbane. And then I should cut this story short, but boy, was it challenging to get a flight out of the US and into Australia in peak COVID. Do you want to continue the timeline from there?
Sure. So we got here in January 2021. Again, timing that mostly for the school schedule, but also because 6 months is about as fast as you can throw together that kind of a move. We were sort of stuck, for lack of a better term, in Australia for a year. I mean, about 18 months. We got back to the US 18 months later for a trip. We decided to move back to the US, and we arrived in the US in July or early August of 2023, and kids started school again. That's all on the school schedule. School started September. And we kind of all four of us were like, yeah, we'd rather be in Australia. It was somewhat I mean, kind of surprising, but equally surprising and not surprising. But we really all, especially the girls, really felt, I think, more connected here than I expected they would feel after 2.5 years. And so that was like a year and a half of kind of soul searching about what was a better place for our family to be. And we're getting to the end of this slide, I think.
Oh, okay. All right. And so then we moved back to the US. We thought we want to build this fancy home. We decided against that eventually by December 2023. 6 months go by, and then we were on our way to Kakadu. That's the photo in the bottom left corner there. And Liza said, you know what, I've been thinking about it for a while, and I think I'm okay with doing this. And so it's kind of like what happened 4 years beforehand. So we had a playbook. We're familiar with what we needed to do. So we sold a bunch of stuff, figured out what was worth keeping, went through this whole process, got here in January of this year. But we found that the rental market here had just tightened up. There was almost nothing. There was two vacancies in all of this suburb and the next suburb. And it was very important that we get into school catchment so the girls could go right back in when they were. We ended up moving. A friend was doing a renovation, and we found a place off market. We moved in there. Then we moved coincidentally back into the same house. I mean, an identical house to what we're in. It's not actually the same house. It's next door, but unnecessary detail. And then just recently we bought a house. So we were lucky enough to have our offer accepted, and so we'll be settling on that in about a month's time. And that rounds out what's happened in the last 4 years. So we've gone from moving here for a temporary visit, renting the entire time, and not really being residents, as in permanent Australian residents. We did not re-domicile, and we were still domiciled in the US. You know, the kids were thought to be going to school there. Still had businesses there, still do have businesses there, actually. We still had a dog who was alive. Unfortunately, he's no longer with us. We had our primary residence there. And so this move, it's subtle, and it would seem as in nothing is different. You know, we were here for 2.5 years, and now we're here again. But it's fundamentally different in that is we've re-domiciled. We are now here, and we don't have any further plans to move from here forward. So the difference that makes from a financial planning point of view is that I was not an Australian tax resident previously, but now I'm an Australian tax resident. And so the decision to buy was made based on that. I just wanted to quickly cover off on this slide, just talking about the budgeting that went into it. You can see here, we actually run through a very detailed daily budgetary spreadsheet with our clients, but this is one that I came up with to budget in US dollars and Australian dollars, and to make sure that we had the right currency in the right account ready to pay and deal with the expenses that we saw coming up. So what did we have? We had the permanent residency app. I think shamefully, Australia treat migration as a profit center. So, that's what you're talking about for an application fee. That's not guaranteed. That is to apply, is about $9,500. There's an APRA fee. Don't be fooled. That's not it's a typo actually. APRA, not the Australian Prudential Regulatory Authority.
There's an H in there
Yeah,
somewhere.
there's an H. It's a healthcare regulator. So there's a fee there. Excess luggage. A lot of people are very surprised when I mention this, when I say I'm going to go back a few slides here and just show you this. This was actually the van that we rented for the first trip, but it was indicative of the second trip as well. And that is, we came with 20 checked bags. People say, "Oh my goodness, what are you thinking? 20 checked bags." The thing is, when you think about it, and the cost per kilogram, and I'll mention this later when we talk about shipping, it's actually only about 33, actually, technically, yeah, 33% more expensive to bring in a bag with you as extra cargo than it is to ship stuff. So shipping takes months longer, tons of uncertainty versus just having what you want right there with you. So it ended up actually somehow we got lucky, and the total bill was about half of that. But there was some finagling with credit cards and loyalty status and all the rest of it to save about $1,200 there. Shipping, when all is said and done, it was about $15,000. So the US 13,800 right there, and then the Aussie customs clearance people want to be paid too. So a little over 15. We had a deposit on the rental, flights, of course, bond cleaning on the house that we were renting in Minnesota. Insurance to be paid up front, furnishing this new house. The budget, I think we probably have most of that left over, I think, because we haven't bought much because we're not in our forever home. So we're stepping over boxes and packing gear right now. We did buy a new car. First time I've ever bought a new car. I'm sure someone could criticize me for the and say that that's not the best use of money to buy a new car, but we really do enjoy it. And there's that customs clearance as well. Let me see here. That's about all I had to say on the budget side of things. Foreign exchange. So over the course of a couple of months, I saw the Aussie dollar was uh, weakening versus the US dollar, which made it an ideal time to convert. I did have a terrible story with Ally Bank. Otherwise, I really like Ally Bank. I'd recommend them for daily banking in the US and for everyday banking for permanent residents and citizens. But when it comes to doing a large wire transfer, they are unnecessarily bureaucratic and just difficult to get things done. There was a day when the exchange rate plummeted in early August of last year, and I mean a massive change, like a 2 cents. It just suddenly dropped, and I said, right, we need to do a wire right now, and they did it around for about a week before that actually happened. So then I did the exchange at Interactive Brokers, and then for the past couple of years I've been using Defence Bank in Australia, but will likely swap over to Bank Australia, which is an amalgamation of various credit unions that is set up as a B Corp here in Australia. So that is a change I've yet to make. Banks really, though, is very much a commodity type of service. Liz, why don't you start us off here with the shipping versus selling decision?
Well, I mean, I think we had hoped that shipping would be cheaper than just selling everything and buying new. It turns out it's probably mostly a wash. But I mean, the benefits of shipping is that you have the stuff that you've spent years sort of curating, all your personal um things that you like. In our case, it's a lot of, bicycles and kitchen equipment, that's sort of our two passions, right? Um and the downside, of course, is that you have to wait for international, over the ocean shipping. And so it took, was it 4 months?
Yeah.
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 So, I mean, I think Ash feels more passionately about if you should ship or not, but that's what we did. It it's sort of a hassle, I guess, but I think it would have been equally a hassle to try and sell all of our stuff. They did require, which made it less of a hassle, um, that they pack everything. If you're moving outside of the US and it's being shipped internationally, here I'm fading in and out. So they said you can't pack anything, you're not allowed to do any of that. So they just showed up and they packed everything, which was great. What else do you want to say about that?
Well, firstly, Nancy's written in about Wise. Wise would be about 2,000 times more expensive than what we did do with Interactive Brokers, and about 3 times more what we've negotiated with Currencies Direct. But thank you. Yeah, Wise is otherwise a lot better than using the banks. That's true. Thank you. So, I'm really torn about the decision to ship versus buy. It was so stressful. I mean, it was so stressful to deal with this shipping company. Um, it was really the electric bikes that was the tipping point for why I decided to ship in the first place. And it has been wonderful to have, as Liza said, our own stuff curated. If you just stay level with
Yeah,
me,
okay.
then there's
Yeah, but when you move, then I disappear,
okay.
I think.
So, anyway.
Arete.
Oh, you're touching.
Oh,
You might.
it
Okay.
might delete us.
Yeah, hopefully not. So anyway, it was wonderful to finally get our stuff, but exceedingly stressful. Nothing more stressful than being over a barrel with these shippers where they've got your stuff and they just say, "Oh, here's another invoice for
Yeah.
$2,000. Are you going to pay it, or are we going to steal all your stuff and hold you to ransom?" I kind of think it's a unique situation. The only parallel I can think of is work. And we went through this just 18 months beforehand, working with an architect and design build firm where they have the land that you own and hopefully the home that you want to build, and they just say, oh, it's going to be another $50,000. If you want that stairwell or that cabinet or whatever. It's the same kind of thing. So they just name their price, and basically you've got to pay it. You're dealing between multiple countries, so there's not a whole lot you can do. And that was just so insanely stressful, I found. The other thing is that everyone seems to have it in their minds that shipping is done by volume. They say, "Oh, did you get a container?" Well, we don't really know how much space our stuff occupied because it's done by weight. And when I added some additional gym equipment on there, I got some
Yeah.
good Black Friday sales in the US. Well, I thought they were a good deal, but then they bumped up the shipping estimate by $2,000 because of the weight. So don't kid yourself. It's done by weight, not volume.
It's very confusing because they look at all your stuff and then they talk about you're going to need a container, a large one, a small one, blah blah blah. But then the pricing is done after they get all your stuff and then they weigh it, and that's what they actually base the price on. So it's really I don't know, if you're not in that industry, I found it really hard to sort of figure out how they calculate their fees. And yeah, like Ash said, it's out of your control. If you want
Yeah.
your stuff back, you just have to pay whatever fees.
They also
The company, there's two different countries, and they're very, it's all sorts of fees every which way.
They also bloat up your stuff with which kind of goes against the weight argument more towards volume, but they wrap everything. I mean, we're talking about pencils getting wrapped in 3 layers of this crate paper. Uh, I didn't quite understand it, but our house we're swimming in packing material right now because we're not going to unpack because we're moving in a month into this house that we just bought. So I'm a big fan of unaccompanied excuse me, of excess baggage. It was $200 per bag, US dollars, that is per bag, and that bag could weigh up to, was it 52 pounds? I think it's or 20 kilos, I think is what it is. So 20 kilos is surprisingly, there's a lot of weight. It's hard to actually even fill a bag with 20 kilos worth of stuff. And so that's what we did. We brought all sorts of kitchen, maybe a bit of kitchen stuff, maybe.
Yeah, yeah, we
Oh,
bought some
okay.
kitchen stuff, not pots and
I,
pans,
I saw your
but
expression changing. I was like, oh, I guess we didn't bring kitchen
no,
stuff.
we brought like utensils, not pots and pans.
Okay.
Um, Cookbooks, maybe one cookbook.
But stuff that you wouldn't think to bring in a bag, we did bring in a bag because we've done this before. So at the end of the day, I think Liza was exactly right. It was a wash. Like there's definitely benefits to having our stuff like art in particular, bikes. That's great, but it was so stressful, so expensive. We figure with $15,000 for shipping, we probably could have sold what other stuff that we did ship for, let's say 5 grand on the low side. So 30,000 Australian dollars. If we'd showed up we said we've got 30 grand just to buy everything that we had in the US. I think if we were disciplined and took a few months to look on Facebook Marketplace, then we could probably have done it, I think, and had it a lot less stressfully, but probably more time. I mean,
Yeah.
to buy all that gym equipment or bikes, all of it takes research and time and testing and all the rest of it. So unfortunately, folks, I guess I wish I had a better answer for you, but either way, it's going to be painful. That's the bottom line. Schooling and education. Liz, do you want to kick this one off?
Sure. Well, we didn't want to have the kids start another school. Like we wanted them to be able to go back to their old school here. And because the catchment area it's quite dense, they don't take any kids out of catchment, even if you'd gone there previously. So we had to find a school in catchment or housing in catchment. And you can leave that to the last minute if you want. But I didn't want to do that. So we worked out, like Ash said, a sort of an off-market rental. Um, and this is a very urban area, so the schools are packed, especially since COVID. A lot of people have moved to the Brisbane area because of the weather, and it's lovely. So when all this working from home happened in COVID, a lot of people from Sydney and Melbourne um, have come up to Queensland and the Brisbane area, and the schools are absolutely packed. The private schools are totally full. If you want a private school, you have to get on the wait list. Um, from when you're pregnant. And if you want a public school, you have to live in catchment. They're not doing out of catchment. And very strict about it. Even the public high schools do house calls to knock on the door and see if the
Is that
family.
true? I've heard
Yes.
that.
Yeah.
House calls. Oh
Yeah.
my goodness.
They will they'll come to your house unannounced. I know Indooroopilly does that and knock on the door and see if who's living there really is who's signed up to, who said they were living there.
Wow.
So, um, yeah, so that's that. I mean, that's just something to know if you're coming here, and you're in an urban area. I assume it's the same in the other big cities in Australia.
I just want to say that we had dinner with some friends the other night, and their two elder boys go to Indooroopilly State High, which is one of the better state schools around here. And I was asking about, how discipline is working there and how difficult it is for a student to be expelled. And the older boy was like, "Oh, people get expelled all the time." And the first reason he came to is because of the
So
overcrowding.
full.
That was what he said. He was like, they're looking for excuses to expel these kids, which is ridiculous. This is the exact opposite of how it used to be. So that was a bit of a shock. But you were saying,
Yeah. So we're back. I mean, our status now is that we've got both the girls are at they're in primary school. So the primary state school where they were before, and they've reintegrated, I'd say, pretty darn well. And we're just looking at high schools, just starting the search for the older one. High school, as you know, if you're Australian, starts in grade 7, which is
wasn't always the case. It was grade 8 when I went through, but
yeah. So I mean, for me, that seems phenomenally young, but of course, no such thing as middle school here. So
healthcare. Oh.
there I am.
Oh, you disappeared. How do you do that a lot? You just teleport out of
Magic.
the room and then
Oh,
come
no, you're
back.
doing
Whoa.
it.
So healthcare. Not a lot to say here. You have to obtain this record of movements from the Department of Immigration. They send you this very basic, printout of exactly when you've come and gone from the country. I said, hey, I wasn't here for the past 18 months. I therefore wasn't hit with this lifetime loading cover. It wasn't here for the previous 20 years either, so don't tax me for that. Did plenty of shopping around for a private health insurer, but I think there's two observations that I have about financial and insurance institutions in Australia. One of which is because they're more tightly regulated, there's just a lot less variance between the experience that you'll have. It seems like in the US, there's banks that are high fees, low interest rate. They're just terrible. And then you'll find some other bank that's way better with low fees, high interest rates, great service. And there's this huge difference. In Australia, it just feels much more commodified across financial institutions and health insurance companies as well, or insurance companies as well. The other thing is that the search tools, the shopping tools aren't nearly as good. And the Consumer Reports magazine in Australia, known as Choice magazine, that has really gone down the toilet. And since when I was a kid, my family subscribed to it. And I remember in the late 80s, they were very clear in the criteria that they used. And now it's as if they're afraid of making a recommendation. They're just not very helpful. And then you go to look at the comparison websites and you find out that they're receiving commissions for certain referrals, so they're offering tainted advice. Very hard to get straight answers there. So I ended up going with Navy Health. I was in the Army Reserves for a number of years, so I qualified there. Was it a huge difference? No, not really. Has it been any different from any of the other insurance companies in the past couple of years? Not really. The big difference was with HBF that I was with for a little while. I ended up giving them away. I was happy with their domestic service, but when we went away originally for 2 months back in 2022, they wanted me to fill out all this paperwork uh, to prove that I was back in the country with like even the my ticket number on my flight or something like that. And I just said, I'm not doing this. This is ridiculous. I told her I'm not here. I'm not paying the premium. And one of the companies was with West Health at that time, a rural New South Wales mutual insurance company, and they were fine with it. HBF said, you need to prove that you left and entered and whatever. And I was like, I'm not doing this. I'm going to be coming and going for the rest of my life. I'm not doing this every time. So no. So that was the end of that. Navy Health has been fine so far. No complaints, but no real compliments either. I mean, they're just kind of doing their job, which is great. Um, as for health insurance on the US side, I have looked at this for years and years, and I've spoken with many insurance agents, and basically there's just no market for it. So if you want, and what I mean by is
Temporary.
temporary, like you're coming with your family, you're afraid that someone gets sick or injured in the short time that you're in the country. How do you get properly cared for and not bankrupted by being an uninsured person in the US? Well, where I'm at currently is with comprehensive travel insurance. So I've signed up for an annual policy with Southern Cross. It ended up costing us like $1,800 for the four Australian dollars for the four of us. I had to just, they did ask for a little bit of medical history. Unfortunately, in the tour to Brisbane, I crashed and broke a rib. So I had to, they asked, has anyone been sick or injured in the past 3 years? And well, that had just happened a month beforehand, so I had to put that down. I think that added $100 to the policy, but overall, it seems extremely reasonable. And without having made a claim, and with looking fairly thoroughly through the health coverages of this policy, I felt relatively satisfied that this was the way to go. Also, the other thing I noticed when looking at the other health insurance companies is that every other insurance company was basically Zurich. So it's they were underwritten by a master policy with Zurich, and essentially it was just a marketing arrangement to say that they have travel insurance. Not really. You're just offering the Zurich policy under a different name. Southern Cross, however, is offering their own unique policy in this particular market.
The
Yeah.
only, sorry, there I am again. The only aside about health insurance before you switch topics that I would say is um until recently, Ash and the kids are in Medicare and then they could do a private health cover together. But because I didn't have a temporary or permanent resident status, I mean, I was just on the first time we lived here, I was on a series of visas that were all temporary. What I signed up for, which was very affordable, was something called overseas health cover. And did end up having to have a surgery and everything on that. And what they cover is basically what Medicare would cover. So they do whatever your Medicare reimbursement would be.
But the premiums were quite reasonable, right? Or like $80 a month or something like that for this
I
policy.
think 50,
50.
55 a month. I mean, it was really reasonable. And then when I had my surgery and any other healthcare I needed, they would reimburse what Medicare would cover. Now that I've done this very pricey spousal visa application, or partner visa, I guess is what it's technically called. I'm eligible, so I've done my Medicare application and stuff. But just as an aside, if you're coming, here for a few years and you don't qualify for Medicare, you'd get something called overseas health cover, which was, I mean, it took a little bit of Googling to figure out what kind of coverage that would be. And anyway.
So other benefits that this travel insurance policy has here, canceling or changing your journey, it has to be for a covered reason. You can't just say, wake up on the wrong side of bed and decide you're not going. But it's got a whole range of other valuable things. Baggage and personal items, I like that. I often travel with my bikes, and so having a good amount of coverage there is very valuable to me. Personal accident, well, hopefully that doesn't happen, and a range of other things as well. Rental vehicle, that's very helpful also. So business and work, certainly something I should address. So given I have already done this for 2.5 years, moving here was really a lot less nerve-wracking this time around. I knew it could be done. I had grown my business and successfully served my clients for 2.5 years. And so I knew that with making a couple changes to my routine and also adding a staff member, that it'll be possible to really continue and grow things. So workday for me starts at 6. That may mean I'm up at 5 a.m. or sooner, meeting with Tuesday through Saturday. It also means I'm a little bit isolated from the family. So here it is on the downside. I don't see my kids in the morning. I don't see really anyone. I'm up before anyone. I'm working. I'm busy taking meetings pretty much till lunchtime. But by about 11 a.m., I'm not getting many emails anymore, and I can follow up on things. So that works out well. Saturday, which is Friday, of course, in the US, it's remarkable to discover how little work actually gets done on Fridays in the US because when I look at my emails on a Saturday, I've got barely anything. I've got maybe 5 emails to catch up on, which I do on Monday. So it works out well. Notice I'm saying I offer meetings. I'll still work on Mondays, which works out great because it's an admin day to get caught up on all the other things that's involved in actually running a business. So Nicole started back in March. She's doing a great job helping with scheduling. Business has continued to grow. We're around 120 million US dollars in assets under management. We're just in the process. One of my things to do this afternoon is to be looking at the package that my compliance attorneys put together for becoming an SEC advisor in the US. And coming up in a future webinar will also be an announcement about becoming an authorized representative with an Australian financial services license holder, which will mean Areté Strategists will be the only firm able to offer specific personal advice in both countries. So technology, tools, apps, things that we use to make life easier living this cross-border life. Some of them may be new to you. Many of you, however, will be like, oh yeah, of course, I know about that. So Google Voice, I put that at the top of the list. Why? Because I can call people in the US. I can receive two-factor authentication messages to log into this, that, or the other. Some banks, however, are onto VoIP numbers, and so they won't send to Google Voice.
Mm-hmm.
That's where you can still call the number. I don't know why texts, maybe that can be spoofed or something, but Ally Bank, they won't text to Google Voice, but they will call, so I can still get those calls and still log in. So that works well. Wells Fargo, on the other hand, that's who I use for business banking. They issued me with one of these RSA dongles that you see down here. We're headed back to the US. We signed up for Mint Mobile. Another market failure on the US is the market for prepaid mobiles has disappeared, or almost disappeared. I was back there for 3 weeks when I was in Berkeley and had an afternoon spare, and so I went shopping for prepaid phones, kind of thinking I'd be talking about this at some point. And I ended up leaving Verizon after learning it was going to be like $100 for 3 weeks, $100 for 3 weeks, which is just disgusting. So I went over to AT&T. It wasn't a whole lot better in the end. It was like $60 for 3 weeks, but that's what I did. So we're trying Mint Mobile, which piggybacks on the T-Mobile network. Apparently, that's not so bad in Bend, Oregon, and Minneapolis, where I will be on this trip.
So it's a prepaid SIM.
It's an eSIM,
It's
actually.
a prepaid eSIM, so it's not a burner phone. It's not a prepaid like cell phone. We use our regular cell phones with a prepaid SIM
Right. So
eSIM.
I guess that's one thing to watch out for is making sure you've got an unlocked phone. But eSIMs are a hassle. Honestly, I guess I'm a bit of a Luddite. Like I prefer the old SIMs because the eSIM will kick out your existing SIM if you can't manage, the new eSIM goes into the correct slot, which the software has been a bit buggy. I haven't found that it actually goes where you want it to go, and so it copies over your existing SIM, and then you come back to Australia, and then you got to figure this all out again. It's a hassle. We use ExpressVPN for a virtual private network. It works very well. It's not the cheapest, but I've found that other cheaper ones just don't actually work. I also think Netflix, Amazon, there's another company, they're somehow getting onto to Express VPN and virtual private networks so that even if you're using one of these to say that you're in the US, it somehow still knows that you're not and it will still kick you off. Also using Calendly. Why is this under technology? Because it's a scheduling app and it's incredibly handy to be able to say, right, I'm going to offer these appointment slots in this time zone because I'm in Australia until this date, and then suddenly my time zone, my availability will radically change because I'm in a different part of the world. Lars, you want to talk about apps and memberships? Since we were talking about this just yesterday.
Were we?
Sure, with the
Oh,
lounges for
with
the
language.
trip.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, so TripIt, I guess if you have anything particular to say about that, you should say it because that's really, I mean, you really use that one.
I use it because I find it's what is this like $40 a year for TripIt Pro, and it's the one app that I have where it keeps certainly flights, hotel reservations, tours to a lesser extent, car reservations, just everything that you need when you
And
arrive.
restaurant reservations.
Well, I don't really use it for that,
Oh.
but sometimes it picks it up anyway.
Mhm.
Um, but it's just handy, when you arrive at a check-in counter, be it at a car rental place or an airline or wherever, it's just there. It's like, here's my confirmation number. Instead of plowing through your email and being like, oh my God, when did I book that flight? And you can't search by United because there'll be 6 months worth of spam that you've received from them. So that's why I use TripIt.
So, yeah, we were talking about lounges yesterday, hotel lounges. Um, and so we have our credit card allows us a priority pass memberships, which there are lounges all over the place if you're with priority pass. I guess you have an Amex Platinum for business, is that right?
Mhm.
And do you use Lounge
Well,
Buddy?
I use Lounge Buddy to find out what lounges are at what airports. There is a dirty trick that Delta has initiated, and that is if you are with Amex and you have an Amex Platinum card, which one of the benefits, probably the only benefit to having an Amex card at all over the competitors, is that it gives you Delta Lounge access. But this dirty trick that Delta's instituted is if you buy a basic economy ticket, then even with the Delta card, they'll say you are not entitled to use the lounge. So you have to pay for their a minimum of a full economy ticket to even use the lounge with Delta. So this Amex Platinum could be on the chopping block for that. But one huge benefit in Australia is that does not apply with Virgin. So the Amex Platinum will qualify you for Virgin lounges. So if you do have a lot of domestic Australian travel, that can be a neat hack to get access to Virgin lounges.
I don't know what you want me to say about content.
Content, just what does one use to keep their sanity and with long flights? These are
Oh,
yeah.
we
Well,
use the in-flight entertainment.
that's
We use the in-flight entertainment for the kids. And I guess we have used Disney, but we canceled that. So now Netflix, downloading videos onto the iPad. But all the long haul flights, you just each get your own little TV, and that's pretty simple. I think you download a lot of stuff from YouTube and Apple News that you like to watch,
yeah.
right?
I feel like I've developed adult onset attention deficit disorder. So watching these long movies that I don't care about is less interesting to me. So in the week preceding a flight, I'll go through YouTube. I've got a YouTube Premium account, and I'll just download, dunk, 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 download all these different things that I actually want to watch, and then use, the Apple EarPods, and that does the trick. Apple News as well for a whole bunch of magazine subscriptions, so that the good reading material right there, and um, that's about it, folks. Liz, did you have anything else on apps, memberships, or miscellanea?
Well, I don't know if we have time.
Oh, well, let's
But
see.
some of the slides that I think we ended up having to cut were about so your career, I mean, you own your own business and so you're running it from either place. My career is in the medical field where you have a professional license that doesn't necessarily transfer over so easily. So that's, I think, a big thing to consider is what you're willing, if you're going to do a move like this, what is your profession and how do you and build professional networks and all that sort of thing. One friend of mine who was an investment banker in Hong Kong for 20 years and then moved here, she gave me the advice and she said, don't try and build your former career. Um, find something new and build something new and fresh because you're always going to kind of be comparing it. So, I mean, I think that's one thing that's a little bit of a bitter pill to swallow if you're transferring mid-career, like we're in our 40s and you have your professional network and you have your sort of professional sort of um stature, you may be you're a respected professional in your field, I guess is what I'm trying to say, and then you move to a brand new place where nobody knows who you are and you don't know who anybody else is, and that can be a little bit of a bitter pill to swallow. And I guess the jury is a little bit out on my career about if I'm gonna try and stay in the same field. I'm a nurse practitioner, or if I'm gonna take the opportunity to do something in an adjacent field. I'll do something similar. But anyway, that's just something to think about.
So a couple of folks, William and Hiran here, have asked about tax preparers. So I think one is a little different to the other, perhaps. William's question is recommendations. I would, yeah. So two recommendations there. One would be you've asked for people living in Australia. I have got two answers. I'd say US expat taxes down in Melbourne. That's what I'd recommend. Or Murphy, which is not related to me. I want to say Brad Murphy. No, he's not a cousin, not a brother. There's a guy called Brad Murphy. He's a tax attorney. He's also out of Melbourne, and I think it's Murphy Taxes. So that's what I'd offer there, William, for your question. And then Hiran, what about US versus Australian income taxes? I take that a different way. So in moving to Australia, yeah, the income taxes are way, way higher in Australia than what they are in the US. I knew that coming in. We knew that coming in. What are we doing to mitigate that? There's not a lot that honestly can be done to mitigate that. Probably the fancier strategies involve those that are on temporary visas. Coming in, you get a step up in basis. You can use the tax treaty to repatriate US retirement accounts. That's not or not yet our situation. So we're dual citizens, intend on remaining dual citizens for the foreseeable future, probably not forever. I think it does depend on in-laws, health, parents-in-laws, and where the kids might end up. If they end up in the US, then that could throw a wrench in things. Um, So they're going to be higher here. You can hold a business. If your business is taxed at business rates, then maybe you could set up a business to take loans from your business and do things a little more tax efficiently there. But that's really getting into the weeds of planning and may not be applicable to too many people here. Peter, good to see you. What is the chance that 3.5% overseas remittance act passes? Yeah, I'm aware of that. I'm not happy about it at all. We've got until the end of the year, do note, before that comes into effect. And you're absolutely correct. It could be a very large unexpected expense for covered green card holders repatriating to Australia, and could an additional remittance tax even tip the scales to pursuing US citizenship? I think this is a space we need to watch. There's also the what's it called? There's a residence tax bill. I mention it in most presentations I do. We're looking to get traction for that. That would essentially treat dual US citizens who are overseas as if they've received their certificate of loss of citizenship. I had a client today by chance who actually received that from the Perth consulate. But it would take away many of the disadvantages that exist for American citizens abroad. Peter, we just need to keep watching this space. I am very concerned about that. That is something that I'm aware of that's out there, but we need to see what's going on with the backroom dealings with the Congress and the Senate. Anonymous attendee asks, tax impact of sell a house before you depart US for Australia versus closing after. Um, Not going to be a huge. Let's think about this. Depends on your immigration, your U.S. legal status, your immigration status. So if you sell while you're still a U.S. tax resident, you're going to be eligible for the primary residence exemption, 250,000 for single files, 500,000 married filing joint. If, however, you were on a temporary visa and you return to Australia and then sell, that could be a different situation altogether. And this the ATO, I honestly couldn't say off the top of my head what the ATO treatment would be. Would they give you the primary residence exemption, even though the residence was located overseas? I don't know the answer to that. Would you believe that one has actually never come up? And the reason why is I've always suggested people just sell it beforehand because it's pretty rare that someone has a gain greater than 500,000. It does happen, of course, but it's pretty rare to see a gain of that amount. All right. Where can you learn more? Come to the website, click on Get Started, and follow through with what that looks like. Next month, what are we talking about? Estate planning, structuring Australian inheritances for US beneficiaries. I just spoke to a prospective client this morning. He's the beneficiary of an Australian family trust. He's got superannuation and two brothers. And so I was like, well, this is awfully familiar. Jeff, good to see you on the call, by the way. But this is awfully familiar to my circumstance, where my dad is in Australia, two of my brothers are in North America, and so there really is a composition of assets where, if structured correctly, then we can end up minimizing the tax bill. There's no need whatsoever to leave a tip for the ATO or the IRS. They don't work on tips. They work based on law. Thank you, Liz. She laughs at my dad humor. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
So, why not be efficient just where you can and leave what you want to who you want and not excess amounts to the tax authorities. Anyway, folks, it's been fantastic. Thank you very much for your interest in today's topic. We continue to do this not only because life unfolds and our decisions, evolve, but also because seem to be very popular topics when we actually share, hey, this is what's going on, this is why we made the decisions that we made. But I hope you can see that it's all very idiosyncratic. It's all specific to us.
Mm.
It's if your situation was different, you might make different decisions given your circumstances. And yeah. Anyway, enough said about that. Thank you so much for your interest, and hopefully see you next month.